Hey everyone, my name's Leanne. I'm the face behind Small Gestures Vintage and Crafts. Welcome to my channel. I am glad that you're here with me. It's been a couple of weeks. We've been on vacation in Arizona visiting our kiddos and visiting friends and family. And I always love going back to Arizona, but I kind of love coming back to the green and the trees and the country and the two-lane roads. Maybe just a little bit more. Is that a bad thing? But anyway, I've got 4 projects for you in this week's video. I filmed them before we left on vacation. 2 are flips, 2 are some little projects that I came up with out of some old pallet board, some old pallet wood, and an old crate that was gifted to me. It's got all sorts of chippy goodness. We've got IOD, milk paint, distressed finishes, all of that yummy stuff that I love. So if you are ready, let's do it. For project number 1 this week, I picked up this handmade heavy wooden crate. When we picked up some stuff from an auction, a guy gave it to me, and I thought it would be perfect for a sign that I have been wanting to do. So I got busy taking it apart as best I could. Some of these screws that were in there were a little wonky, so I did the best that I could and then took a mallet to it and started taking these pieces apart, gave them a quick sanding. I pulled out 6 pieces, and 2 of those pieces I cut about 2.5–3 inches smaller than the rest because those are going to be the back of my sign. You know, when I was working on this project, I had such a moment. When I was outside sanding the wood, there was a beautiful red cardinal that landed on the other side of the patio. And when I was gluing these pieces together and wiping the glue on my apron, I had a vision of my dad, who was a hobbyist woodworker, and his jeans that were always stained with glue swipes, where he just wiped his fingers off on his jeans. And it was a moment. And I don't know why I said it, but it was a moment. But so I've got them all glued together, and now I'm just going to clamp all 4 of these pieces down really well, make sure that they're all flush and that they're not buckled, and then let them dry. Once everything is dried, then we attached the back pieces. I just put some brad nails on each of the boards, 2 at the top and bottom, and gave it a couple of good coats of shellac because I want to try to eliminate some bleed through. And I'm mixing DIY White Swan and Tarnished Pearl together and giving it a dry brush paint job. After it was all painted, then I also hit it with a sander just to distress it a little bit more. And in the middle of the sign, I drilled 4 holes kind of in an X shape or a cross pattern. And this is some old rusty baling wire that I have. It's a super heavy gauge. I have no idea what it is. It's from my husband's stash. It's wrapped in duct tape. But it's heavy gauge wire. So you can see I started in the back and fed both ends of the wire through 2 of the holes because I am going to use this wire to anchor a lug wrench, and I am going to make a sign. So I'm positioning it where I want it to go, and then I just twist it, and it's going to go into those ends are going to go back into the other 2 holes that I dug, and I just kind of feed it through a bit. I pull the wire through, and then I wrap them around again, so it's good and secure. It's not just wrapped in the middle, but each of the 4 pieces of the lug wrench are also wrapped, and then we're going to do some stenciling. You may be able to see on the right side there where the E is, there's a faint outline of an E, and I tried to stamp it with some IOD stamps, but it really was faint and I wanted something a little bigger. So I ended up finding these stencils in my stash. I think I just got them at Walmart. I am not a big stenciler unless my Cricut is involved because I always seem to have bleed through, but I decided to suck it up and try it for this project. And I'm just making just kind of a funky directional sign. I saw a sign like this in a Airbnb that I visited and fell in love with it, and I just decided to go ahead and make one for myself. After I stenciled the letters, then I came in with just a really fine artist brush and I connected those spaces so it doesn't look so much like a stencil, and I was able to paint down in between the pieces of the wood where they come together. I just didn't, like I said, I just didn't want it to look like it was stenciled on. I did use, I think this is a 1/2 inch stencil brush from Jamie Ray. These are the best stencil brushes. I'm not fond of stenciling, but these are game changers. They work so well. So I just finished filling in the rest of the letters, and I like how my little rustic farmhouse piece from all of my reclaimed materials turned out. Project number 2 this week. This little rooster, he was my first patina project, and I really wasn't fond of the way it came out. And I actually saw Heather from Create Your Own Cozy do some roosters, make over some roosters with some milk paint, and I thought, oh, I have a rooster that might look really cool with some chippy paint. So I am using a mixture of they're both Sweet Pickins milk paint. This is Flour Sack. I just have a little bit left, and then I used a couple of scoops of antique ironstone. And then with milk paint, it's powder, as you can see, and then you just mix equal parts paint or powder and water. Mix it really thoroughly, and then let it sit up for about 10 minutes. You want the consistency of a melted milkshake. Before I started painting this guy, I did give it a couple of coats of shellac because I was worried that the chippy from the milk paint might take off the patinaed finish. And I honestly, it's been so long ago since I did this, I can't remember. I think he was painted in colors. I can't remember what the finish was underneath this patina paint. And so I just gave him a couple of coats of shellac just to kind of lock in that patinaed finish. I think this rooster took actually about 3.5 coats of paint, and I wasn't getting a whole lot of cracking like I wanted. And I remember Heather mentioning that with milk paint you can reactivate it and spritz it with water and then hit it with heat again, and that's what I did. I found myself doing that quite a few times, and I loved the end result. You can see there I got some incredible chipping, and it really, that patina paint underneath it really pops through, and I just love the cracking all over this little bird. And I also hit it up with a brush. I wanted to get any little flakies off before I came in with some clear wax. And I thought the color of the milk paint was dark enough. I didn't want to darken it with an aging wax or an antiquing wax, so I went ahead and I just used clear wax on this little guy after I got him good and scrubbed, and I totally love the way that he turned out. As a reminder, here is what we started with and the end result. For project number 3 this week, I took a piece of pallet board that I had, cut it into 3 lengths, and I'm going to do a distress paint finish on it, but I didn't like the light colored wood, so that concoction right there in that jar is Waverly antiquing wax with some water and a little bit of black DIY paint, little black dress. So I went over both sides of the boards with this antiquing mixture, and then once it was completely dry, I just pulled out a plain Dollar Tree candle and I just scraped the candle randomly over the wood so I could get a little bit more of a distressed finish. When you do this, the paint that you paint on top of the board will not adhere to the wax. So then I just come along with a scraper and you can just scrape that paint off. It just saves a little bit of time when you're distressing, and I just really like the look that it gives. So this is just, what is this? White Swan by DIY. You'll have to forgive me. This is actually a couple of weeks ago that I filmed all these projects, so my memory is escaping me right now, but this is White Swan by DIY, and I'm just going over it a couple of times just until I get the look that I want, and then I'll start scraping it off once it's completely dry. All of the paint is dry, and you can see it's a little more than just dry brushing that I did, but everything's dry, so I'm just coming along with a metal scraper, and you can see where I rub it along the paint. Anywhere where there's wax underneath, it just pulls it right up. The rest of the wax is, the rest of the paint is really adhered well to the wood, and that is stuck down good, but wherever that wax was, that candle wax was, it just comes right off. And I really like the distressed look that you get, and you really can control it a little bit more because it's just wherever you want to apply the wax, along the edges or the top or the bottom, however you want it to look. I I did follow up with a sanding sponge just to take care of any remaining rough edges that I might have and make sure that I've got all of any of the areas that I've waxed distressed back. The IOD transfer book Lover of Flowers is next, and I wanted to use these floral images. We're going to make some simple single hangers. I, believe it or not, about 3 years ago, I thrifted a big wooden sign, and it had these hangers in various colors. These were the actual colors that were on there, and when I was reminded that I had those in my stash, I thought they would be perfect with some of these floral transfers. If you are new to the world of transfers, IOD always, with all of their transfer books, you are provided with a clear transfer stick, and you just cut out the transfer that you like, adhere it to your surface, and then press it down with this transfer stick. As you can see, it came off super easy. And then what I'm doing now is just called burnishing, and it's where you just make sure the transfer is good and adhered to the surface. You don't have any air bubbles, or any bumps or anything like that. You want to make sure it is good and down on your surface, and then we're just going to give it a top coat after this. After I was finished with all three transfers, then I'm just taking a 220 grit sanding sponge, going over the transfers lightly just to distress them a little bit so they blended in a little better with the pallet wood. And then they all got a coat front and back of a clear top coat in a flat finish, and this one is by Dixie Belle. Now I wanted to age all of these up a little bit, so I just have some DIY dark wax. I'm really just going around the edges and kind of fading it in towards the center. I didn't want to take a chance of the flowers in the center looking muddy at all. And you can see it just transitions and smooths out and rubs out very nicely, just to give it a little more of a worn, aged look. Now I felt like that green hanger was a little wrong for that rose, so I decided to repaint that, and I'm mixing petticoat pink and cowgirl coral with a little bit of white swan and repainting that hanger as a starting point. So we're going to paint it pink and then take it from there and see how we like it. So while that little hanger is drying, I am marking the top of each of these boards where I want the wire to go. That's what I'm going to use for a hanging apparatus because it's pallet wood and it was kind of curved on the back side. If I just put like a sawtooth hanger, it wouldn't hang flush against the wall because of that curved surface. So I wanted to add a little more detail anyway, so I marked it, drilled some holes, and we're going to go back to that heavy-duty baling wire for the hangers. So I cut off a length of wire and then I'm just feeding it from the back, and I'm just going to curl it around. Why I pull out my needle nose pliers right here, why I didn't just think to curl the wire using the needle nose pliers, don't ask me. I had to curl it around a paintbrush, but then ended up wrapping it so tight around the paintbrush I got it stuck. I could not get the paintbrush out. I had to but it was the perfect curl, so I didn't want to uncurl it. So I actually chipped off the paint and the lacquer on the end of the paintbrush so I could slide it off. Yeah, it's totally stuck. Lesson learned. If you need to curl wire, just use needle nose pliers. It works so much better. So I got that first side attached, and then I just took that paintbrush, and you can see how the end of it is all chipped off. And then I just loosely wrapped the wire around the paintbrush again, just to give it some curls, just randomly, free form. This is such a heavy gauge wire. Those curls are not gonna curl out, or not gonna pull out. And just to give it a little more pizzazz, I guess, and then cut it the appropriate length, stuck it back through the hole on the other side, and repeated the same process all over again. Back to that green hanger, formerly green hanger. I didn't like the pink. It was a little too pinky for me, so I took a little bit of crinoline by DIY, and this was almost dried out, and that's one of the great things about the clay-based paint. I just put some water in there and mixed it up again, and it had a little bit of texture in there, and I was completely fine with that. But I have just a little bit of that crinoline paint on the plate there, and mixed in a little bit of that pale pink just to warm it up, and repainted that little hanger. And then after it was dry, because it's clay-based paint, I just distressed it back a little bit, and I really like the end result. It shows some of the pink, and it also brought back a little bit of the original green color. DIY paint, of course, needs to be sealed in, so I finished this little hanger off with a little bit of dark wax, and then also came in with some clear wax to help wipe some of that dark wax back so it didn't look muddy at all. It just aged it and gave it the perfect patina look. I really love how each one of these turned out, and the fact that I had these existing hangers in my stash that were the perfect color for the most part. I think was just a little God wink moment. It was meant to be. I love how they turned out. For my fourth and final project, I have this sweet little owl that I actually picked up in Arizona over Christmas, and he looks like he's kind of a distressed wood, but he's actually resin, and I have some leftover milk paint from the Rooster project, and I wanted to use that on this guy, but I didn't want this yellowish cream to come through, so I am giving him 2 fresh coats of brown paint, and this is Dixie Belle in the color chocolate. After the brown paint was dry, then I came in with the milk paint, and as a reminder, this is the same from the Rooster project, so it is a mix of antique ironstone and flour sack, both from Sweet Pickins milk paint. I probably ended up actually doing 3, maybe 4, I don't even remember, coats of milk paint, and it was really hard to see some of the cracking on camera from where I was filming. So this, I think, is after the second coat. Look at that cracking. It looks so good. So I may have lost just a wee bit of footage, but fast forwarding, this is after, like I said, I think it was probably 4 coats, and I got some really good crackle and chipping on this little guy, and I gave him a coat, or I just went right over it with the DIY dark wax, and then to wipe it back, I have a little bit of clear wax on my rag just so he doesn't get too dark and muddy looking. Now when I was sanding him and getting the chipping paint off, you can see there's a little white spot right there that went down to the resin. So on my little micro applicator, I actually just have some 99% isopropyl alcohol, and because I had already waxed him and I was gonna let it go, but it really to me was standing out like a sore thumb. So I went over it with a little bit of alcohol to get the wax off, and then just came in with a little detail brush and a couple of layers of the chocolate, and you would never know the difference. And here is the before and the after. Thanks again, everybody, for hanging out with me this week. I hope you enjoyed this week's video. If you haven't already, please hit that like, share, subscribe, and leave me a comment. I would love to hear from you. And until next time, take care.